What's up, BoobTube? Today we're going to, well, hopefully you can see me. Here, let's do this. Today we're going to talk about Weber carburetors and their parts, specifically the IDA or downdrafts. Most of the components on the Webers are the same unless you get into the really small ones. The side drafts, I believe, have fixed pilot jets, but the main jets are the same as downdrafts, so on and so forth. But you can look all this information up on the internet, and it'll tell you specifically whether or not this video will apply to you or not. So specifically the downdraft, we're actually going to look at my Genberg, but the jets and the emulsion tubes and everything else are going to be the same as a factory downdraft. So let's go ahead and flip over and look at that. Alright, so this angle might not be the greatest, but it'll give you a general idea of what I'm talking about as I'm walking through it. So in the carburetor, or in a Weber, you have two main Venturis. You have a primary Venturi and a secondary Venturi. This, the bigger one, is a primary Venturi. This one is actually marked as a 37, so the inner diameter is 37 millimeters, and it's pretty much what causes the vacuum in the carburetor for it to pull fuel. Bigger diameter into smaller diameter causes a displacement of pressure, and as the speed increases, so does pressure. It's an equal on both sides of the equation, Bernoulli's equation, blah blah blah. So Venturis, these are what allow more air, blah blah blah. If you hear that a carburetor is a 48 IDA, that means the largest diameter, or the main body of the carburetor, which in this case is this ring right here, would be considered a 48 millimeters. Typically you don't have it bored all the way to that full maximum size because you have to be able to draw through it. In this case, this is a 58 IDA Genberg, so the main body is bored out to 58, and the main Venturis in this are not labeled, but I would assume if they're probably 46s or somewhere along in those lines. The secondaries you don't really do much with. I'm sure you can get different sizes, but that's beyond the scope of what this video is going to be. They're pretty much all the same. Next, let's get into the actual body of the carburetor. So what I'm going to pull out is what you would generally tune in a downdraft. So you have a pilot air corrector and a pilot jet. So the pilot air corrector looks something like this. Here we go. See if it actually focuses on it. Let's come back a little bit. Okay. Anyways, you see what it is. It's pretty much just like looks like a screw. It's got a screw cap on the top of it. It's got some threads on it, and it's got some holes on it. And it's got a number on the side of it that distinguishes either the size of the holes or the amount and the size of the holes. So this is technically a 130 air corrector, which is pretty large for a pilot air corrector. I believe my car is running like a 100. I can't remember off the top of my head, but that's beyond the scope of the video. So this is this, and then this is your pilot jet. So this is denoted, it's got a F whatever, the F10. This is denoted as an F10, but that really doesn't matter. It's the number underneath it that matters, and this is an 80. So that's an 80 whatever, it's micrometer whatever opening. So these two parts in a rotary on a Weber, these two parts determine the fuel along with the air mixture screw, which is more for fine adjustment, but these two determine the amount of fuel from 0 RPM up to approximately 3,000, maybe 3,500. So if your car is very lean on the idle circuit, or if you stab the throttle, these have something to do with it. Stabbing the throttle can be adjusted out with the idle mix screw. You can go way rich in it, and it'll just constantly be dumping way too much fuel through the carburetor, which will allow the stabs to not have a hesitate, but then you end up oiling or fueling down your gasoline, your oil. So that's the main two parts on the idle circuit. One adjusts the amount of fuel that you put in, and one adjusts the amount of air that you put in. Typically, big moves are done with the fuel jet, or the pilot fuel jet. If it's like really lean, you would adjust this before you adjust the air corrector. The air corrector, you come in, and this is where you need like the fine tune. So this would be like, oh, it's cruising at 14 to 1, but I want it to be like 13.7 to 1 or something like that. You would adjust the air corrector versus the fuel jet. So that's the idle circuit. The main jet circuit has three main components. It has an air corrector, an emulsion tube, and then a main jet. So the air corrector goes in the top of an emulsion tube. So here's the emulsion tube. It does not have a main jet or an air corrector in it. This is specifically a F7. This pretty much will come in every Weber when you buy it from the factory. It's got factory jets in it. I believe it's like a 120 air corrector with an F7 emulsion tube with like a 130 something fuel jet, I believe. I have it sitting right here, so 135 main jet. So this is pretty much the same as the idle jet, the idle air corrector, to an extent. This is pretty much how you determine how much the fuel and air mixes before it goes through the main jet, and so on and so forth. So you can't rely on the emulsion tube identification, which this one is an F7. I don't know if you can see that, but you have to generally look it up online what the determination of the jet is, or the emulsion tube is, because they don't go in order. So like an F1 is not the same, it might not be exactly the same as an F3 going up in size. It's how the how these holes are drilled, how many holes are drilled. Well, here, just for reference, you can see here is a F11, and you can tell that it is, not only is it different shapes, it had the bar in the middle is different lengths. This is the F11, this is the F7. The bar in the middle is different lengths. The holes are higher up. They're larger holes. It even has some that are angled that are higher up. So you have to look it up on the internet what emulsion tube you think you need. Typically, Racing Beat for 13B, which is what's in my car, recommends an F4, which is what's currently in that car. So this is your main body of tuning for 3000 and up. The air corrector is what you do fine adjustments with. So it dictates how much air is allowed to pass through the emulsion tube, which causes a vacuum in the emulsion tube and allows how much fuel is going to get pulled through the main jet. Typically, rotaries run anywhere from 160 to 200 on the air corrector. I've had good luck with a 160, but this is pretty much the same as the idle air corrector, which is this is like your fine tuning adjustment is the air corrector. Next is the main jet, and clearly everybody knows what the main jet's for. This pretty much determines your full throttle load. So once you get to full throttle, this is what determines how much fuel is running through that. Well, technically 3,000 to full throttle, but this is pretty much full throttle. So main jets are main jets. They're pretty easy to do. Next, you have your idle air fuel adjustment screw. So this is something that I recommend everybody replace if you buy a used carburetor, mainly because I don't know if it'll show on there very well, but the end of the needle can get damaged, and if it's damaged, then adjusting however you adjust your idle mixture screw, or however you adjust this, doesn't matter because it's not uniform down the length of the needle, so it's allowing weird things to happen. So if you buy a used carburetor, used Weber, replace these. No matter what, they're like $5 a piece. Just go ahead and replace them. And what damages them is if you screw them in and you seat them and then you seat them real tight. It's just brass. It's brass against aluminum. Brass is a softer material, so it's going to damage the brass, which is what you want it to do. You don't want it to damage the seat. But these need to be replaced pretty much anytime you buy something used. New ones, they're going to be fine. Obviously, it should be brand new, but you still might want to pull them out and look at it. This adjusts, helps adjust your idle circuit. It's another way of tuning the. It's pretty much how you adjust the car when it's sitting at idle. So you play with this, and then also the actual screw that adjusts the throttle linkage for the butterflies being open. Other than that, that's pretty much everything that's inside of a Weber downdraft. From here, it's just fine tuning what exactly your car needs. I can tell you that if you go based off of what Racing Beat recommends, I personally believe that their air corrector on the emulsion tube is too large. I've had better luck in the 160 to 180 range on 13B 6-port street, just a street engine, no porting done to it, stock engine. But that's pretty much it for this. There's some other things like how to set your bowl float height and stuff like that you can dabble in. There's videos on that. It's not hard to do. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Oh, they're down in the bottom of the bowl underneath the float. There is a pump jet bypass. And what that allows is when you stab the throttle, which in this case, when you stab the throttle, it actuates the pump arm, which is this arm right here. So that's pumping fuel through the pump jets, which is to help offset that stumble that you might have when you stab the throttle. It shoots a bunch of fuel down in there. Typically, I leave those stock. It's typically like a 50 or something like that. But some people say to put a 0 in it, which is just it blocks the hole off altogether, so it can't be bypassed. And some people say to leave it stock. I've left it stock and it runs great. But that's your mileage may vary. That's about it. I don't believe there's anything else. Obviously, you have your pump jets. These do come in different sizes, or your your pump jet, which is the thing that sticks out the side, which actually pumps the jet. They come in different sizes. I've never ran a different size and don't have any issue with it. Personally, mine seem to be more of a stream, and I'd much rather them be more of a spray. But that's neither here nor there. So, yeah. But anyways, guys, with that, hopefully this video was informative and gives you an idea of, you know, what's going on inside your carburetor. I did one a long time ago that was like the basic tuning of Weber's, but this will give you a much better in-depth kind of what everything does. I will link down in the description below to the website that I constantly reference on tuning these, and that website is more for a V8, but the principle is the same. Just don't worry about the jet sizing, just read and understand how everything works. Don't go by the sizing of that at all, because that is set up for each individual throttle body is for an individual intake valve on a V8. So you can imagine how much smaller everything needs to be versus a butterfly for each rotor. So yeah. But anyways, guys, I'm gonna end this video off here. I'm actually gonna start working. Gotta change the oil in that. And I think I have finalized what I want to do with this thing ECU wise and roll cage wise and hardtop wise. So now I get to spend an ungodly amount of money on getting all that stuff here so that I can stab the motor in and finally get it running. But anyways, until next time, guys, happy wrapping.